Welcome to Creative Movies Recapped. Today's recap is a 2013 biographical drama based on a true story called 12 Years a Slave. Solomon Northup, who is a free African-American talented violinist, lives happily with his wife Anne and their 2 children in Saratoga Springs, New York. He is approached by 2 men, Brown and Hamilton, who offer him a job as a musician. Solomon agrees and goes with them to Washington, D.C. After arriving in Washington, D.C., Solomon enjoys a night out with Brown and Hamilton. They celebrate their arrival in the city with dinner and drinks. However, Solomon wakes up the next morning in a dark cell, tired in chains, realizing he has been kidnapped and sold into slavery. Brown and Hamilton made sure he was fully drunk, and after he passed out, they sold him. Solomon is stripped of his identity and any evidence of his free status. He tries to call for help, but being in an isolated area, no one comes to his aid. He finds himself imprisoned along with other kidnapped free African Americans. He witnesses the harsh conditions and the fear in the eyes of his fellow captives. Birch, who is a slave trader, buys Solomon and prepares him for transport to the South. They are transported using a ship, and the whites are seen abusing female black slaves sexually. In one instance, a black male tries to stop a white man from abusing a black female, and he is mercilessly killed and his body thrown in the ocean. On arrival to the South, the blacks are treated as less of humans and more of property. As Solomon and his colleagues wait beside the ship to be sold, he remembers the good life he had back as a prominent black man back in New York with his family. Solomon receives a new name, Platt. They are all bought and taken to the Louisiana plantation to be resold to local white men. Solomon and Eliza, a lady who is separated from her children, are sold to William Ford, a relatively kind and compassionate plantation owner. Solomon and other Ford's black slaves bought from different parts begin working on the farm cutting wood for construction as they face threats from Tybeats, a white man who oversees Ford's farm. Solomon gains Ford's recognition and respect due to his suggestions on how to do various jobs easily. Ford gifts him a violin. Ford is a Christian believer and teaches his slaves the way of the Bible. Solomon and other slaves continue to live in the slave cottages feeding on deficient food. One day, Tybeats tries to beat Solomon, telling him to strip his clothes, but he ends up refusing and fighting Tybeat. Tybeat, with the help of 2 white workers, tries to hang him, but another white land overseer saves him. He is left hanging on a tree with his toes supporting him on the ground for the whole day. Ford rescues him. Solomon shares his story with Ford, who sympathizes with him but advises him to keep his true identity a secret for his safety. Due to a financial crisis, Ford is forced to sell Solomon to Edwin Epps, a sadistic and brutal plantation owner. Solomon's skills as a carpenter and fiddle player make him valuable to Epps. Solomon adapts to life on the plantation and works alongside other slaves, enduring the hardships of labor in the cotton fields. Despite Ford's relative kindness, Solomon witnesses the cruelty of Epps and his overseers and experiences the dehumanizing treatment endured by slaves. He befriends a young slave woman named Patsy. Solomon witnesses the harsh treatment and abuses suffered by the slaves on Epps' plantation, particularly Patsy, who becomes the object of Epps' twisted obsession. He witnesses the extreme abuse and torments inflicted upon Patsy by Epps and his jealous wife, Mistress Epps. Patsy endures both physical and sexual violence, leaving Solomon filled with a sense of helplessness and desperation. Solomon continues to work in the cotton fields alongside the other slaves, enduring the relentless labor and severe punishments from Epps and his overseers. The constant fear and abuse take a toll on his spirit as he yearns for freedom and to be reunited with his family. Epps's wife uses Solomon as a sender to get her some objects from the neighboring town, and he witnesses other white men hanging fellow black men in the forest, which inflicts fear in him, but they excuse him as he tells them he has been sent by Epps's wife. Patsy appears to be friends with Mistress Shaw, a black woman married to a neighboring white plantation owner who she goes on weekends to visit, but Epps keeps declining her from going out of her territory due to his sexual relationship with her. On one night, Patsy gives a piece of gold she has stolen from Epps to Solomon, in exchange for a favor to kill her to reduce her suffering. Solomon rejects the gold piece and refuses her offer. A plague occurs on the cotton farm, and the slaves are taken to work on another plantation owner's farm to be cutting Napier grass where the owner pays them very little, in contrast to Epps' plantation farm where they earn nothing. After some time, the plague ends and they get back to Epps' farm to attend to the cotton. Solomon, determined to regain his freedom, secretly writes a letter to Anne, his wife, Hoping it will reach her and inform her of his whereabouts, he entrusts the letter to a sympathetic white worker working on the plantation and pays him the coins he earned at the Napier grass farm to take the letter to the post office, hoping for a chance at rescue. Solomon's secret desire for freedom is exposed when Epps discovers the letter he had written after being told by the white worker. Solomon defends himself to Epps, telling him that the white worker is just but a drunk liar who wants Epps to hire him as a farm overseer. Epps gives in and forgives him. He burns the letter and goes back to working on the farm. While working on a construction, Solomon encounters Samuel Bass, a Canadian carpenter and abolitionist. Bass expresses his strong anti-slavery beliefs, and Solomon shares his story with him, hoping for assistance in gaining his freedom. Patsy goes back to Mistress Shaw's house, and Epps gets furious about it, despite him having warned her not to go back to her house again. When she comes back, she tries to defend herself that she had gone to get bathing soap. Epps, with the help of his white workers, strips her, ties her to a post, and forces Solomon to whip her naked, threatening to kill every black man if Solomon fails to whip her. He takes the whip from Solomon and further whips her heavily. Her skin is torn off from the whipping, and this depresses Solomon, making him shed tears. Bass, moved by Solomon's story, agrees to help him regain his freedom. Bass sends a letter to New York, informing authorities of Solomon's illegal enslavement. Eventually, Solomon is rescued from the plantation by New York authorities and his white allies from New York. He leaves Patsy and the other slaves behind to go reunite with his family. On arriving, he finds his wife already remarried to another man. His kids are now adults, and her daughter has already bore him a grandson who is named after him. Solomon brings the men responsible for his abduction to trial, but loses the case as he is unable to testify against the whites in the nation's capital. He publishes a book, 12 Years a Slave, and becomes active in the abolitionist movement and lectures on slavery throughout the northeastern United States and helps fugitive slaves on the Underground Railroad. Hope you've enjoyed today's recap. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.